I watched through my doorbell camera as the police handcuffed my father and sister right there on my doorstep. My hands were shaking, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I was finally free. But let me back up because you need to understand how I got here, how a sunny afternoon BBQ turned into the moment that changed everything. Before I tell you how we got here, if you've ever felt small around family, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment with your story. Trust me, you'll want to hear this. 6 months ago, I was a completely different person. My name is Clara, I'm 32 years old, and I'm a single mom to the most beautiful 8-year-old girl in the world, Lily. For years, I had been the family punching bag, the one who never measured up the disappointment. My younger sister, Jessica, was the golden child, perfect in every way, according to our parents. She had the right job, the right clothes, the right fiancé. I had a failed marriage, a struggling graphic design business I ran from home, and apparently a daughter who didn't dress well enough for family gatherings. The patterns had been there my whole life, but I was too conditioned to see them clearly. When I was 12 and Jessica was 9, I won a regional art competition. I remember coming home so excited, clutching that blue ribbon, thinking finally my parents would be proud of me. My mother looked at the ribbon for exactly 3 seconds before turning to Jessica and saying that her piano recital was more impressive because it required real discipline. My father didn't even look up from his newspaper. Jessica smirked at me from across the room, and I learned right then that my achievements would never matter. When I was 16, I got into a prestigious art program at a summer camp. It cost $2,000. My parents said it was too expensive, that we needed to be practical. 3 months later, they spent $5,000 on Jessica's debutante dress and party because it was an investment in her future. I worked 3 jobs that summer, instead saving money for college while Jessica went to Paris with our mother. I met my ex-husband Tom when I was 23. He seemed kind at first, supportive of my art. My parents loved him because he had a steady job in finance. What they didn't see, what I barely saw myself until it was too late, was that Tom was just another version of them. He slowly eroded my confidence, criticized my work, made me feel like I was lucky he stayed with me. When I got pregnant with Lily, I thought maybe things would get better. They got worse. Tom left when Lily was 2, said he couldn't handle the responsibility that I had trapped him. My parents blamed me, of course. My mother said I had failed to keep my husband interested. My father said I should have been more accommodating, more feminine, more like Jessica, who was by then climbing the corporate ladder and dating a series of increasingly wealthy men. Jessica would visit with her designer handbags and look at my small apartment with barely disguised contempt, picking up Lily's toys with 2 fingers like they were contaminated. But I kept going back. I kept showing up to family dinners, kept calling on birthdays, kept hoping. I think part of me believed that if I just tried hard enough, sacrificed enough, diminished myself enough, they would finally love me. That's what abuse does to you. It makes you believe you're the problem, that you deserve the treatment you're getting, that if you could just be better, everything would be okay. The year before the barbecue incident was particularly brutal. In January, my father called me to his office downtown. He was the CEO of his own investment firm and ran the Hayes Family Foundation, a charity that supposedly helped underprivileged children. The irony of that still makes me sick. He told me he was restructuring his will and that Jessica would be getting the majority of the estate because she had proven herself responsible. I would get a small amount in trust, accessible only if I met certain conditions, including his approval of how I raised Lily. He presented this as generosity, as him looking out for me because I clearly couldn't manage money on my own. In March, Jessica announced her engagement to David Wellington. The Wellingtons owned a chain of luxury hotels across 3 states. The engagement party was at their country club, and I wasn't invited. My mother called to tell me it was because the Wellingtons had a strict guest list, and I just didn't fit the image they were going for. She suggested I work on myself, maybe lose some weight, dress better, find a real job. Maybe then I would be included in future events. In May, I had a major breakthrough with my graphic design business. I landed a contract with a mid-sized tech company, my biggest client yet. It was a 6-month project worth $50,000. I was so proud, so relieved, because it meant financial stability for Lily and me. I called my mother to share the news. Her response: "Oh, that's nice, dear. Jessica just got promoted to senior vice president. She's making $300,000 a year now. We're taking her to Tuscany to celebrate." The message was clear. My success would never be enough. But what really set the stage for that day in the backyard was something that happened 2 weeks before the barbecue. Lily came home from a weekend visit to my parents' house in tears. She was usually quiet after visits withdrawn, but this time she was openly sobbing. It took me an hour to get her to tell me what happened. Jessica had been there with David showing off her engagement ring, talking about wedding plans. Lily, being an excited 8-year-old, asked if she could be a flower girl. Jessica laughed, actually laughed, and said, "We're only having elegant children in the wedding party, sweetie. Children whose parents can afford proper dresses and dance lessons. Maybe in another life." Eleanor had apparently nodded along, saying Jessica was right to have standards. But it got worse. Lily told me that when she started crying, my father had pulled her aside and told her she needed to toughen up, that tears were for the weak, that she needed to learn the world didn't care about little girls who cried. Then he had done something that made my blood run cold. He had grabbed her arm hard enough to leave marks and told her that if she told me about any of this, I would be upset and it would be her fault for causing problems in the family. I saw the bruises on her arm, small but unmistakable, 4 finger marks where he had gripped her. I almost called the police that night. I almost cut them off right then, but I talked myself out of it. I told myself he was just being strict, that he didn't mean to hurt her, that maybe I was overreacting. God, I hate that I did that. I hate that years of conditioning made me doubt my own eyes, my own daughter's pain. I should have known that agreeing to go to that barbecue was a mistake. Lily begged me not to go. She had nightmares for 3 nights before it. She told me she was scared of Grandpa and Aunt Jessica. But I had been raised to believe that family was everything, that you didn't turn your back on blood, that being the bigger person meant continuing to show up no matter how much it hurt. So I convinced her we had to go, that it would be fine, that we would just stay for an hour. That Saturday morning felt wrong from the start. I woke up with a sense of dread I couldn't shake. Lily threw up her breakfast from anxiety. I almost canceled. I had my phone in my hand, ready to text my father with an excuse. But then he texted me first. 3 messages in rapid succession. "The barbecue starts at 2 p.m. Don't be late. This is important family time. Jessica has news to share and we expect everyone there. Your absence would be noted and remembered." That last line, the threat was subtle but clear. In my family, your absence would be noted and remembered meant there would be consequences. There would be punishment in the form of increased criticism, withdrawal of what little affection I received, possibly even changes to that will my father held over my head like a sword. So we went. Lily wore her favorite purple hoodie and jeans. I had tried to get her to change into a dress already, anticipating the comments, but she refused. She said the hoodie made her feel safe, like armor. I understand that now. She was trying to protect herself the only way she knew how. We pulled up to their house at exactly 2 p.m. The house was a monument to their success, a sprawling colonial in the most expensive neighborhood in town. 4,000 square feet, manicured lawns, a pool in the back that cost more than most people's homes. I had grown up in a smaller version of this house before my father's business really took off. Even then, it had never felt like home. It felt like a museum where I was always on the verge of breaking something priceless. The sun was blazing unseasonably hot for late May. I could already smell the charcoal from the grill, could hear voices and laughter from the backyard. My hands were sweating as I held Lily's hand walking through the side gate. She gripped my fingers so tight it hurt. The backyard was full of people, not just family but business associates, country club friends, people from my father's charity board. This wasn't just a family barbecue. This was a performance, a display of the perfect Hayes family. I felt immediately out of place in my department store sundress, while everyone else wore designer casual wear. Jessica spotted us immediately. She was standing by the patio table holding court, surrounded by admirers. She looked stunning in a crisp white designer sundress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her hair perfectly styled her engagement ring, catching the sunlight like a weapon. She looked us up and down with an expression I had seen thousands of times before, that mixture of disdain and pity that made my stomach turn. But this time there was something else in her eyes. Something eager, almost excited. Later I would realize she had been planning something, that this was all set up. She excused herself from her circle of admirers and walked toward us, her heels clicking on the stone patio like a countdown. She came close enough that I could smell her expensive perfume, close enough that when she spoke, everyone nearby could hear clearly. "Oh my God, Clara, you still let the kid dress like she just crawled out of a refugee camp." Her voice carried across the yard loud enough to make conversations stop, heads turn. "No wonder you can't keep a man." The silence that followed was excruciating. I felt every eye on us. I felt Lily shrinking beside me, trying to make herself smaller, invisible. I wanted to say something, cutting something that would put Jessica in her place, but my throat was closed. Years of conditioning kept me silent. My mother, Eleanor, approached from the outdoor bar, wine glass already in hand, though it was barely past 2. She was wearing pearls and a cream-colored pantsuit, looking every inch the society matriarch. She patted Jessica's arm affectionately, a gesture of solidarity. "Honey, don't be too harsh. Clara's doing her best with what little she has." The fake sympathy in her voice was worse than Jessica's direct cruelty. At least Jessica's hatred was honest. I tried to move past them to find a quiet corner where Lily and I could wait out the required hour before leaving. But my father appeared, blocking our path. Richard Hayes was a tall, imposing man, 6'3" and still in good shape at 60. He had built his reputation on being a successful businessman and philanthropist. Everyone in town respected him. He sat on the boards of 3 hospitals, ran the Hayes Family Foundation that gave scholarships to underprivileged kids, donated generously to every high-profile charity event. Nobody knew what he was really like behind closed doors. Nobody knew that the man who preached about helping children had systematically destroyed his own daughter's self-worth and was now targeting his granddaughter. "Still got that defiant look in your eyes," he said, his voice low and authoritative but loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "See where it's gotten you. A failed single mother living in a 2-bedroom apartment. You should learn from your sister." He gestured toward Jessica, who was now showing off her engagement ring to a group of board members' wives. "That's what success looks like, Clara. That's what happens when you make the right choices, when you have discipline and standards." I felt 8 years old again. I felt worthless. I felt like everything wrong in my life was my own fault, my own failure. That's what he did. That's what he had always done. He made you believe that his cruelty was wisdom, that his abuse was tough, love that if you just tried harder, did better, were better, everything would be fine. I saw my cousin Mark watching from across the patio. He was Richard's nephew, someone who had always been quiet at family gatherings, someone I barely knew. He looked uncomfortable, maybe even concerned, but he didn't say anything. Nobody ever said anything. That's how family abusers operate. They create a system where everyone is complicit in the silence, where speaking up means becoming the next target. I managed to move past my father, pulling Lily with me. We headed toward the pool area, hoping we could just hide there until it was acceptable to leave. The pool was massive, an infinity pool that seemed to blend into the horizon. The deep end was 9 feet, clearly marked. Lily couldn't swim in water deeper than 5 feet. She had only recently learned to swim at all, and even then only in the shallow end of the community pool near our apartment. We found a spot by some lounge chairs near the shallow end, far from the main gathering. I thought we were safe there. I thought wrong. Jessica followed us. Of course she did. I realized later that she had been watching, waiting for us to be isolated. She approached slowly, deliberately, that same eager look in her eyes. "You know what your problem is, Clara." She spoke quietly, but her words were sharp. "You think you're better than us because you struggle. You think being poor makes you noble, makes you more authentic. But really, you're just a failure who drags that kid down with you." I tried to ignore her, focusing on Lily, smoothing her hair, telling her it was okay. But Jessica wasn't done. She crouched down to Lily's level, her white dress pooling around her like a predator coiling to strike. "Hey, sweetie, you know your mommy is why your daddy left, right? He couldn't stand to be around her anymore. She drove him away, just like she drives everyone away." Something inside me cracked. But instead of walking away like I should have, I raised my voice, ready to fight back. Exactly what she was counting on. "Get away from my daughter." My voice was louder than I intended. Several people turned to look. Or what Jessica stood up, stepping closer, invading my space. "You going to make a scene, Clara? Going to embarrass yourself in front of all these important people? Oh wait, you don't need to try. You're already an embarrassment." I saw my father approaching, his face already set in that expression of disapproval. I saw my mother trailing behind, eager to witness whatever was about to happen. I saw the board members and business associates watching like we were entertainment. I realized this was planned. This was a public humiliation designed to put me in my place once and for all, to show everyone that I was the problem child, the unstable one, the one who couldn't control herself. But I didn't yell, I didn't scream. I just took Lily's hand and said, "We're leaving." That's when Jessica made her move. I think she'd been planning it all along, or maybe it was a split-second decision born from rage that I wasn't playing my assigned role. I'll never know. But what happened next changed everything. She turned to Lily, smiled that cold smile I had seen directed at me hundreds of times, and said, "Let's see if you're as tough as your mommy pretends to be." Then she pushed her. Hard, with both hands against Lily's chest, right into the deep end of the pool. Everything happened in slow motion and all at once. I heard the splash. I heard myself scream. I saw Lily's terrified face as she hit the water, her mouth open in shock, her arms flailing. I lunged forward, but strong arms grabbed me from behind, wrapping around my chest and neck in a vice grip that immediately cut off some of my air. My father. He had been ready, positioned perfectly to stop me. Let her learn. His voice was a growl in my ear, his breath hot against my face. The world only cares about the strong. If she's weak, she'll sink. That's the lesson of life. Better she learns it now. I thrashed. I fought with everything I had, but he was too strong. He had at least 80 pounds on me and the element of surprise. His arm tightened around my throat, not enough to completely choke me, but enough to make breathing difficult enough to control me. I could see Lily in the water, her face a mask of pure terror. She went under once, came up, coughing, went under again. Her arms were moving frantically, but without coordination. She didn't know how to tread water in the deep end. She was drowning right in front of me, and I couldn't reach her. Through my panic and the spots starting to form in my vision from lack of air, I turned my head desperately toward my mother. She was standing there still holding that damn wine glass, watching her granddaughter drown. Several other people were watching, too frozen in shock or uncertainty. Someone should have jumped in. Someone should have helped. But they were all looking at my father, waiting for his permission, following his lead like they always did. Eleanor took a sip of her wine and shrugged. Always so dramatic. It's just a little water. She'll figure it out or she won't. That moment crystallized everything. I saw my family with perfect, horrifying clarity. These weren't people who loved me but didn't know how to show it. These weren't people who were hard on me for my own good. These were people who were actively trying to harm me and now my child. My mother was willing to let her granddaughter die to avoid contradicting her husband. Jessica had deliberately endangered a child. My father would rather prove a point about strength than save a life. Something inside me broke. Or maybe something inside me finally woke up, something primal and powerful that had been sleeping under years of conditioning. I was not going to let them kill my daughter. I didn't care what it cost me. I bit down on my father's arm with everything I had, breaking skin, tasting blood. His grip loosened just slightly. I drove my heel down into his instep as hard as I could, then slammed my elbow back into his ribs. The self-defense class I had taken 3 years ago came flooding back. He stumbled back, shocked that I had fought back, and his arms fell away. I ran and jumped into that pool fully clothed. The water was cold, shocking, but I barely felt it. I swam to where Lily was, where she had just gone under again. I dove down, grabbed her under her arms, and pulled her up. Her eyes were wide and unfocused, her skin pale. She was coughing, choking water coming out of her nose and mouth. I got us to the side of the pool, to the shallow end, and pulled her onto the concrete. She was breathing, but barely water still coming up. I pounded on her back the way I had learned in a CPR class, and more water came out. She coughed violently, gasped, coughed again. Slowly her breathing normalized. She clung to me, shaking, making small whimpering sounds. I held her and looked up at my family. The world had gone strangely quiet. Or maybe I just couldn't hear anything over my own heartbeat and Lily's desperate gasping. My father stood at the edge of the pool, still clutching his bleeding arm, looking at me with an expression I had never seen before. Not quite anger, not quite fear. Maybe the realization that I had broken the pattern, that I had finally fought back. Jessica had backed away, her white dress, still pristine, her face pale but showing no remorse. Just annoyance, like we had ruined her party. Eleanor was still holding her wine glass, but her hand was shaking slightly. The other guests had started to mobilize, some asking if we were okay, others looking uncertain about whether they should intervene. And that's when I made the decision that would change everything. Still in the water, still holding my traumatized daughter, I pulled my phone out of my soaking pocket. Miraculously, it was water-resistant and still worked. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock it, but I managed. I dialed 911 right there in front of all of them, my voice surprisingly steady. I need police and an ambulance. My daughter was just pushed into a pool by my sister. My father physically restrained me from saving her. She nearly drowned. We're at 847 Oakmont Drive. The operator's voice was calm, professional, asking questions, keeping me on the line. I could see my family starting to panic. My father stepped forward, his face transforming into a mask of concern, shifting into his public persona, the one everyone else saw. Now, Clara, let's not be hasty. It was an accident. You're upset, you're not thinking clearly. Jessica didn't mean to hurt anyone. You know how she is, she was just playing around. Let's handle this privately as a family. Think about what this will do to our reputation, to Lily's relationship with her grandparents. Think about your inheritance, your future. The threats were barely veiled. but I held up my hand to silence him, keeping the operator on the line, answering her questions clearly. I gave her the address again. I described what happened. I told her about the marks I could already feel forming on my throat and chest where my father's arm had been. "Ma'am, are you in immediate danger right now?" The operator's voice was concerned. "No, they won't touch me again. Not with all these witnesses. But I need you to document this. I need this on record. Help is on the way. Stay on the line with me." The wait felt eternal, but was probably only 8 minutes. In that time, people started to drift away, business associates and board members making awkward excuses, not wanting to be associated with what was clearly turning into a situation. I watched my father's carefully constructed social network start to crack. I watched my mother's composure slip. I watched Jessica realize that this wasn't going according to whatever plan she had in her head. The ambulance arrived first, 2 EMTs rushing through the gate with their equipment. Then came the police, 2 patrol cars. One of the officers was Detective Miller, an older man with kind eyes that turned hard when he assessed the situation. He took in the scene, me soaking wet, holding a traumatized child, my father with a bleeding arm, the guilty faces, the scattered guests. "Ma'am, I'm Detective Miller. Can you tell me what happened here?" I told him everything. My voice stayed steady, even though inside I was breaking apart. I told him about Jessica pushing Lily, about my father restraining me, about my mother's indifference. I showed him the marks on my throat that were already darkening into bruises, clear finger and arm marks. The EMTs were checking Lily, wrapping her in a blanket, checking her vitals, shining lights in her eyes. That's when something unexpected happened. My cousin Mark stepped forward. He had been standing at the back of the gathering watching everything. He walked straight up to Detective Miller, his face set with determination. "I saw everything, officer. Jessica deliberately pushed the child into the deep end. Richard grabbed Clara around the neck and restrained her while the child was drowning. Eleanor refused to help. This isn't the first time they've done things like this. I can make a statement. I'll testify to whatever you need." I could have cried. This man I barely knew was willing to stand up against the family patriarch, willing to face the consequences of breaking ranks. His testimony was everything. It meant this wasn't just my word against theirs. It meant there was an independent witness who saw everything. My father's face went white. "You ungrateful little bastard. After everything I've done for your family—" "That's enough, sir." Detective Miller's voice was firm. "I'm going to need everyone to stay calm. We're going to sort this out, but right now my priority is this child's well-being." The EMTs had decided Lily needed to go to the hospital. She was conscious and breathing, but they wanted her checked for water in her lungs and for shock. They asked if I wanted to ride with them. I did. But first, Detective Miller took photos of my injuries with his phone. He gave me his card and told me to call him after we were done at the hospital, that he would need a full statement. As they loaded Lily into the ambulance, I looked back at my family one last time. My father was talking urgently to his lawyer on the phone. My mother had finally put down her wine glass and looked genuinely shaken. Jessica was crying, but they were tears of self-pity, not remorse. And Mark gave me a small nod, a gesture of solidarity. At the hospital, everything became clinical official real. The doctors confirmed Lily had aspirated water, meaning she had inhaled some into her lungs. It wasn't enough to require intubation, but it was serious. She was officially classified as a near-drowning victim. They admitted her for overnight observation, checking for secondary drowning, monitoring her oxygen levels. She was diagnosed with acute psychological trauma. They took photos of the bruising on my throat as part of their medical documentation. Everything went into the official record. While Lily slept in the hospital bed, exhausted from trauma and fear, I sat in the chair beside her and made phone calls. First, I called my best friend. Rachel told her everything. She was at the hospital within 30 minutes, bringing me dry clothes, staying with me. Then I called a lawyer whose name Rachel gave me. Patricia Chen specialized in family law and domestic violence cases. She answered even though it was Saturday evening. "I need help," I told her. "I need to protect my daughter from my family. Tell me everything." I did. When I finished, there was a long pause on the other end. "Clara, what they did constitutes assault, child endangerment, and possibly attempted murder. This is serious. I can help you, but you need to be prepared for the fact that this will destroy your family relationships. There's no going back from this." "Good, I don't want to go back." She met me at the hospital at midnight, bringing paperwork. We filed for an emergency protective order that night, electronically getting a judge to review it, even though it was the weekend. By 6 a.m. Sunday morning, the order was granted. Richard, Eleanor, and Jessica were legally required to stay at least 100 yards away from Lily and me. Violation would result in immediate arrest. But as I sat there in that hospital room watching my daughter sleep, I realized something. Safety wasn't enough. These people had made my entire life hell. They had poisoned every moment of joy, criticized every decision, made me feel worthless for 32 years. And now they had tried to kill my child to prove a point. They couldn't just be kept at a distance. They had to face consequences. Real consequences. Patricia helped me understand how to use the system. We had the police report. We had Mark's testimony. We had the medical evidence, the photos, the documented near drowning. We had the protective order. But I wanted more than legal protection. I wanted to destroy the things they cared about most, their reputation, their status, their carefully constructed image of respectability. Over the next week, while Lily recovered physically and started seeing a child psychologist for the trauma, Patricia and I built our case. Not just a legal case, but a strategic campaign. My father, Richard, was the chairman of a prominent local charity foundation, the Hayes Family Foundation. His entire identity was built on being this pillar of the community, this generous philanthropist who cared about children. The irony was sickening. Patricia put together a package. Inside were copies of the police report, copies of the emergency protective order, copies of Lily's medical records with the diagnosis of near drowning and psychological trauma, and high-resolution photographs of the bruising on my neck. We also included Mark's sworn statement describing not just what happened at the barbecue, but also detailing other incidents of abuse he had witnessed over the years toward me and even toward other family members. We didn't send this package randomly. We sent it to every single member of the board of directors of the Hayes Family Foundation. 15 people, all prominent community members, all people who cared deeply about their own reputations and the foundation's image. We sent it certified mail signature required, so we knew they received it. Within 48 hours, my phone rang. It was Margaret Simpson, the vice chair of the board. Her voice was tight, uncomfortable. "Clara, I just wanted to reach out personally. The board has reviewed the materials you sent. We are deeply disturbed by the allegations. I want you to know that we take these matters very seriously." "I'm glad to hear that." My voice was calm, almost pleasant. "We've asked Richard to temporarily step down from his position as chairman while this matter is investigated. It's a precautionary measure, you understand. We need to protect the foundation's integrity." "I understand completely. I'm sure you'll do what's right." But it didn't stop there. The board members talked. They couldn't help it. Within a week, the story had spread through their social circles. The country club started hearing whispers. The hospital boards where my father sat were having quiet conversations. Donations to the Hayes Family Foundation dropped significantly as people didn't want to be associated with a potential scandal. My father's carefully constructed reputation, built over decades, started to crumble. He wasn't charged criminally right away. The district attorney said they were reviewing the case, but the social punishment was immediate and devastating. Invitations stopped coming. People stopped returning his calls. He was essentially blacklisted from the social elite he had worked so hard to join. But the real masterpiece of revenge was what we did to Jessica. My sister had spent her entire life building this perfect image. She was beautiful, successful, engaged to David Wellington from one of the wealthiest families in the state. This marriage was supposed to be her crowning achievement, her validation, her ticket to a life of luxury and social prominence. She was planning a $50,000 wedding at the Breakers, a destination honeymoon in Bora Bora, a life of country clubs and charity galas. Patricia helped me craft a more sophisticated package for the Wellingtons. We didn't send it to David. That would have been too easy to dismiss as me trying to manipulate their relationship. We sent it directly to David's father, Harrison Wellington, the patriarch who controlled the family's business empire and made all major decisions. The package included everything we sent to the foundation board, but with additional context. We included character references from people who knew Jessica, documenting her history of cruel behavior. We included the story about her laughing at Lily's request to be a flower girl. We included Mark's testimony about patterns of behavior going back to childhood. We painted a picture of someone who was not just impulsive but dangerous, unstable, someone who would be a liability to any family she married into. The Wellington family was old money, the kind that valued reputation above almost everything else. They couldn't afford to be associated with someone who pushed children into pools, someone who might be facing criminal charges for child endangerment. 3 days after we sent the package, David called off the engagement. Jessica called me after that. I didn't answer, but she left a voicemail. She was sobbing, actually sobbing, something I had never heard before. "Are you happy now?" Clara David's family made him break off the engagement. They threatened to cut him off if he married me. "My whole life is ruined because of you. Because of one stupid mistake." "How can you be so cruel? We're family. You're supposed to forgive family. Mom and Dad are devastated. You've destroyed everything. I hope you're proud of yourself." I saved that voicemail. I listened to it several times, not because I wanted to gloat, but because I needed to hear it, needed to internalize that she still didn't understand. She called it one stupid mistake. She showed no remorse for what she did to Lily. She only cared that there were consequences for her actions. That voicemail told me everything I needed to know. I had made the right choice. My mother, Eleanor, wasn't directly targeted by our actions, but she suffered nonetheless. She had to watch her husband lose his position, his reputation crumbling. She had to watch her golden child's perfect engagement fall apart, the wedding she had been planning for months canceled, the social humiliation of explaining to all her country club friends what had happened. The worst part for her was the isolation. People stopped inviting her to their events. The Women's Auxiliary Board quietly suggested she take a leave of absence. She was left sitting in their big empty house with my father surrounded by the wreckage they had created together. She called me once about a month after everything happened. Her voice was small, uncertain, nothing like the confident matriarch she had always been. "Clara, I think we should talk. As a family. I know things got out of hand, but surely we can work through this. For Lily's sake. Every child needs grandparents." "No." My response was firm. "Lily doesn't need grandparents who tried to kill her. She needs safety. She needs to learn that family isn't an excuse for abuse. She needs to see that I will protect her always, no matter what." "You're being unreasonable. We made mistakes, yes, but you're tearing this family apart." "I didn't tear it apart, Mom. You did. All of you. You've been tearing me apart my whole life. I'm just finally refusing to let you do it anymore." She hung up without another word. I didn't hear from her again. The weeks turned into months. Lily made remarkable progress in therapy. Kids are resilient in ways adults forget. She was processing her trauma, learning that what happened wasn't her fault, learning that she was safe now. She started smiling more, laughing more. The nightmares decreased. She made friends at school more easily because she wasn't carrying around the weight of toxic family dynamics anymore. My graphic design business thrived. The contract with the tech company went so well they extended it and referred me to 3 other clients. Without the constant emotional drain of managing toxic family relationships, I had energy and creativity I didn't know I possessed. I hired an assistant, raised my rates, started saying no to clients who didn't respect my time or my work. Within 6 months, I was making more money than I ever had. I was proving to myself what I had always suspected: I wasn't the failure they told me I was. I was capable, talented, strong. I had just been held back by people who needed me to be small. About 3 months after the barbecue incident, I got a call from Detective Miller. The district attorney had decided to press charges. Jessica was being charged with reckless endangerment of a child. Richard was being charged with assault and unlawful restraint. Eleanor was being charged as an accomplice for failing to render aid to a minor in danger. The criminal case would take time, possibly a year or more, to go to trial, but it was happening. There would be official consequences, not just social ones. I testified before the grand jury. I sat in that cold room and told my story again, showed my photos again, answered their questions. The grand jury indicted all 3 of them. Arraignment was scheduled. They each got lawyers, expensive ones. The legal battle was just beginning. But then Richard and Jessica made a huge mistake. About 2 months after the criminal charges were filed, they violated the protective order. They were desperate, probably. Their lawyers had told them the case was not looking good. Their social lives were in ruins. They had nothing to lose, or so they thought. They showed up at my apartment building on a Tuesday evening. I was making dinner with Lily, helping her with homework, living our peaceful life. My doorbell camera alerted me to movement. I looked at my phone screen and felt my heart rate spike. Richard and Jessica were standing at my door. "Clara, we need to talk." My father's voice through the intercom, trying to sound reasonable, authoritative. "This has gone on long enough. We're family. Let us in so we can work this out like adults." Beside him, Jessica looked awful. Her hair wasn't perfectly styled. Her clothes were expensive but wrinkled. She looked like she hadn't been sleeping. She had dark circles under her eyes. Part of me almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I remembered Lily's face under the water and the feeling passed. I didn't open the door. I didn't engage. I calmly told Lily to go to her room and close the door. She knew the drill. We had practiced this. Then I called 911. This is Clara Hayes. I have an active emergency protective order against Richard Hayes and Jessica Hayes. They are currently at my apartment door in violation of that order. I need police here immediately. The dispatcher kept me on the line. I could hear my father getting angrier through the intercom, his true nature showing. Open this door, Clara. You ungrateful little bitch. After everything I've given you, I made you. You're nothing without this family. Nothing. I'm recording this, I said calmly into the intercom. Every word you're saying. Keep going if you want to add threats to your list of charges. That shut him up. But he didn't leave. He stood there with Jessica waiting, probably thinking I would cave, that I would let them in to avoid a scene. He didn't understand yet that I was done caring what he thought done, trying to appease him. Detective Miller arrived with 2 other officers. I watched through the doorbell camera as they approached. My father saw them and his expression changed. He tried to smile to become the charming businessman again. Officers, thank goodness you're here. There's been a misunderstanding. I'm just trying to talk to my daughter about a family matter. Surely that's not a crime. Actually, sir, it is. Detective Miller's voice was professional but firm. You have an active protective order that prohibits you from coming within 100 yards of this residence. You're in direct violation of a court order. I need you to turn around and place your hands behind your back. What? No. This is ridiculous. I'm Richard Hayes. I sit on the hospital board with your chief. One phone call and... Sir, turn around now, or I will add resisting arrest to your charges. I watched through that camera as they handcuffed my father. He was sputtering, trying to name drop, trying to threaten, but it didn't work. His connections meant nothing anymore. Jessica was crying, saying this wasn't fair, that they just wanted to talk. The officers cuffed her too. They walked them both to the squad cars. Neighbors came out of their apartments watching. The night shift security guard from the building stood by, making sure everything was documented. Mrs. Chen from across the hall gave me a thumbs up through her window. My building knew what I had been going through. They were on my side. Detective Miller came up to my apartment after they were processed. He looked tired but satisfied. They'll be held overnight, arraigned in the morning. Violation of a protective order is taken very seriously. This won't help their criminal case. Their lawyers are going to be very unhappy. Thank you. For believing me. For taking this seriously. He shook his head. You made it easy by doing everything right. You documented everything. You protected your child. You used the system the way it's supposed to work. I wish more people in your situation did that. After he left, I went to Lily's room. She was sitting on her bed holding her stuffed rabbit eyes wide. Are they gone? They're gone, baby, and they can't come back. They broke the rules and now they have to face consequences. Good. She hugged her rabbit tighter. I don't want to see them ever again. You don't have to. I promise. That night she slept through without nightmares for the first time in months. The next months were a journey of healing and rebuilding. Lily started swimming lessons, which seemed counterintuitive at first, but her therapist said it might be healing a way to reclaim something that had been taken from her. I was terrified the first day I took her to the community center pool, but she walked in without fear, listened to her instructor, and got in the water. By the end of the session, she was smiling. Week by week, lesson by lesson, she got stronger. Not just physically, but emotionally. She was conquering the thing that had almost killed her. She was proving to herself that she was brave, that she was capable, that she wouldn't let fear control her. I was on my own journey too. I started seeing a therapist who specialized in complex trauma and family dynamics. I learned about narcissistic family systems, about scapegoating and golden children, about triangulation and flying monkeys. I learned that everything I had experienced had names, that it followed patterns, that I wasn't alone. Thousands of people had survived similar situations and come out the other side. I learned to set boundaries in all areas of my life. When other family members tried to pressure me to reconcile, to just let bygones be bygones, I said no. When my aunt called to say I was being too harsh, that family was forever, I said no and hung up. When a second cousin texted saying I should think about forgiveness, I blocked the number. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped justifying my choices. No became a complete sentence. I also learned to recognize and avoid toxic patterns in other relationships. A client who constantly tried to negotiate lower rates while demanding more work, I fired them. A man I went on 2 dates with who gave me that familiar feeling of walking on eggshells, I ended it immediately. I was learning to trust my instincts, to value my peace over other people's comfort. My business continued to grow. That tech company contract led to more opportunities. I was featured in a local business magazine as an emerging designer. I moved to a bigger apartment in a nicer neighborhood. I bought Lily a real bedroom set instead of the secondhand furniture we'd been using. Small victories, but they meant everything. Mark became a real part of our lives. He called regularly to check on us. He came to Lily's school events when I needed support. He treated her with kindness and genuine interest, asking about her day, her friends, her swimming progress. He was showing her what healthy family looks like. We had coffee every few weeks, and he apologized over and over for not speaking up sooner, for all the times he witnessed things and said nothing. "You spoke up when it mattered most," I told him. "That's what counts." The criminal case moved slowly, as these things do. There were motions and continuances and legal maneuvering, but it moved forward. The evidence was overwhelming. Multiple witnesses, medical documentation, photos, recordings. Their lawyers tried to negotiate plea deals. The DA wasn't interested in anything less than guilty pleas with consequences. Finally, about 8 months after that day at the pool, there was a plea agreement. Jessica pleaded guilty to reckless endangerment, received 2 years probation, mandatory anger management therapy, and a permanent criminal record. Richard pleaded guilty to assault, received 1 year probation, and was required to step down permanently from all board positions. Eleanor took a deal for a lesser charge, 6 months probation. None of them went to jail, which disappointed me at first, but Patricia explained that the criminal records and probation terms meant real consequences. Richard could no longer serve on any nonprofit boards. Jessica's career advancement would be permanently hampered. They would have to report these convictions on job applications, background checks, volunteer screenings. The social consequences would follow them forever. But more importantly, the guilty pleas meant official acknowledgement. It meant that legally, officially, what they did was wrong. It wasn't a misunderstanding or an accident or a family squabble. It was criminal behavior. That validation, that official recognition, meant more to me than I expected. One day, about 4 months after the plea agreements, Lily came home from swimming lessons, absolutely beaming. She had passed her advanced beginner test and was moving up to the intermediate class. More than that, her instructor had praised her technique, her confidence, her improvement. "Mom, Miss Jennifer says I'm one of the best students she's ever had. She says I have natural talent. You are amazing, baby. I'm so proud of you." She hugged me tight. "I'm not scared anymore, Mom. Not of the water, not of anything." I realized in that moment that we had both done it. We had both taken something that almost destroyed us and transformed it. Lily had turned her trauma into strength. I had turned my victimhood into empowerment. We weren't just surviving, we were thriving. Last week, almost 6 months after the criminal cases were resolved, I got an email from my mother. It was long, rambling, trying to be apologetic, but mostly making excuses. She said they had all learned from this experience. She said maybe in time we could slowly rebuild a relationship. She said Lily must miss her grandparents. She said family was important, and she hoped I would eventually find it in my heart to forgive. I read it twice. Then I deleted it without responding. Maybe someday I'll feel differently. Maybe someday, if they do real work to change, if they take genuine accountability, if they show consistent changed behavior over years, maybe then I'll consider limited contact with strict boundaries. But I'm not holding my breath. And more importantly, I don't need it anymore. I don't need their apology or their acknowledgement. I know what happened. My daughter knows what happened. The legal system knows what happened. That's enough. I've built a new family now, a chosen family of people who actually care about us, who show up when we need them, who celebrate our victories and support us through challenges. Mark is part of that family. Rachel, who sat with me in that hospital and has been there for every hard moment since. Patricia Chen, who fought for us and taught me how to use the system. Detective Miller, who believed me and took action. Miss Jennifer, Lily's swim instructor, who has been so patient and encouraging. Mrs. Chen from across the hall, who brings us dumplings and watches Lily when I have late work calls. These are the people who matter now. Today, Lily and I went to the pool at our new gym. It's beautiful, with floor-to-ceiling windows and sunlight streaming in. She jumped right into the deep end, something she does now without hesitation, and swam lap after lap. I sat on the edge and watched her, this strong, confident child who faced something terrible and came through it with grace. When she finished, she climbed out and sat beside me, water dripping from her hair. "Mom, are you happy?" The question still takes my breath away every time she asks it. She asks it often now, like she needs to make sure, needs confirmation that we made the right choice. Yes, baby, I'm so happy. Me too. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I'm glad it's just us. Well, us and Mark and Rachel and everyone who's nice to us. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. So here's my message to you, the person reading this story. Your life can change in a single moment. One decision, one phone call, one boundary, one time you finally say enough. You don't have to light yourself on fire to keep others warm. You don't owe loyalty to people who use it as a weapon against you. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to choose your children. You are allowed to walk away from people who make you feel small, no matter what your relationship to them is. And if you're sitting there thinking about someone in your life, someone who makes you feel exactly the way I felt, please know that it doesn't have to be your forever. Change is possible. Freedom is possible. Peace is possible. It won't be easy and it won't be quick, but it is absolutely possible. What would you do if you were in my situation? Have you ever had to cut off toxic family members? Drop a comment below and share your story, because I know I'm not alone in this, and neither are you. And if this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe, because every share helps someone else realize they're not alone either. Together we're stronger. Together we heal. Remember, you deserve to be treated with dignity and respect always. No exceptions, no excuses. And if the people in your life can't give you that, it's okay to build a new life without them. It's not just okay, sometimes it's necessary. Sometimes it's the only way to survive. I survived. My daughter survived. We're not just surviving anymore, we're thriving. And you can too.